You know, they say revenge is best served cold. But what they don't tell you is that the coldest revenge isn't screaming or crying or making a scene. It's silence. It's walking away with your head held high while everything crumbles behind you. Let me tell you about the night I learned that lesson. My name is Sarah, and 3 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was 32, successful, and madly in love with Marcus. We'd been together for 2 years, and I was planning to propose to him at my family's annual Thanksgiving dinner. I had the ring hidden in my jewelry box, my speech rehearsed, and my heart so full of hope it felt like it might burst. Marcus was everything I thought I wanted. Charming, handsome, with that easy smile that could light up a room. He worked in marketing, always talking about his big plans, his dreams of starting his own agency. I supported those dreams. Hell, I funded them. I paid for his courses, his networking events, even covered his rent when things got tight. Love makes you generous, doesn't it? Sometimes too generous. My family had money. Not the flashy kind that buys yachts and private jets, but the quiet kind that builds generational wealth. My grandmother had started a small textile business in the 1950s, and my father had grown it into a manufacturing empire. When he passed away 5 years ago, he left everything to me. Not just the money, but the business, the properties, the investments. I was worth more than most people made in a lifetime, but I never flaunted it. I lived modestly, drove a reasonable car, and dressed simply. Marcus knew I was comfortable, but I don't think he truly understood the scope of what I controlled. The week before Thanksgiving, I was buzzing with nervous energy. I'd told my family Marcus would be joining us, and they seemed excited to meet him properly. We'd done video calls before, but this would be his first time at the family estate in Connecticut. I wanted everything to be perfect. Are you sure about this? My cousin David had asked me during our weekly check-in call. David was the only family member who worked directly with me in the business. He'd always been protective, maybe because he'd seen me heartbroken before. I mean, bringing him to the family dinner, making it official like that? I'm sure, I told him, twirling the engagement ring box between my fingers. I love him, David, and I think he loves me too. There was a pause on the other end. Just be careful, Sarah. Sometimes people show their true colors when the stakes get higher. I should have listened to that warning. I should have paid attention to the little things I'd been ignoring. The way Marcus always let me pay for dinner. How? He'd gotten evasive when I asked about meeting his friends. The phone calls he'd take in the other room, speaking in hushed tones. But love makes you blind, doesn't it? It makes you excuse the inexcusable and ignore the obvious. Thanksgiving morning arrived crisp and clear. I'd driven up to Connecticut the night before, and Marcus was supposed to meet me there. He'd gotten a ride with his friend Jake, he said, since his car was in the shop. I was putting the finishing touches on the dining room when he arrived, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw him walk through the front door. He looked nervous, fidgeting with his tie, but I attributed it to meeting the family. You look beautiful, he said, kissing my cheek. But something felt different, distant. His kiss was perfunctory, like he was going through the motions. Everything okay? I asked, studying his face. Yeah, just nervous about meeting everyone, he replied, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. The family gathering was smaller than usual that year. My mother, my Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda, my cousins David and Jessica, and my grandmother, who at 87 was still sharp as a tack and twice as fierce. We'd all been close since my father's death, bonded by grief and the responsibility of carrying on his legacy. Dinner started well enough. Marcus was his charming self, telling stories and making everyone laugh. My grandmother seemed taken with him, and even my typically reserved Uncle Robert was warming up. I felt my confidence growing. This was going to work. We were going to be a family. It was during the main course that everything changed. I'd excused myself to check on the dessert in the kitchen when I heard voices from the dining room. Not the gentle murmur of dinner conversation, but something sharper, more intense. I moved closer to the doorway, my heart beginning to race. I'm sorry, but I have to say this, I heard my Uncle Robert's voice, formal and cold. Marcus, I think it would be best if you left. The words hit me like a physical blow. I pressed myself against the kitchen wall, my hands shaking as I tried to process what I was hearing. I'm sorry? Marcus's voice was confused, defensive. Did I do something wrong? We know who you are, my Aunt Linda said, her voice tight with disgust. We know about Jessica Morrison. Jessica Morrison. The name rang a bell, but I couldn't place it immediately. My mind was reeling, trying to catch up with what was happening. Jessica is my girlfriend, Marcus said, and I felt the world tilt on. It's Axis, my actual girlfriend. We've been together for 3 years. 3 years. He'd been with her for 3 years, which meant Sarah is just someone I've been seeing on the side, he continued, his voice getting stronger, more confident. She's loaded, you know? Made it real easy to keep Jessica happy while I figured out my next move. I was going to break it off with Sarah after the holidays, but since you already know, the engagement ring box in my pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I gripped the kitchen counter, my knuckles white, as the full scope of his betrayal crashed over me. 2 years of my life, 2 years of love, of planning, of dreaming about our future together. 2 years of paying his bills and supporting his dreams while he was with someone else. You need to leave. David's voice was deadly. Quiet. Now. Hey. Don't blame me for playing the game, Marcus said, and I could hear the shrug in his voice. Rich girl wanted to feel loved. I gave her what she wanted. Everyone wins. That's when I heard the chair scrape back, and my mother's voice, shaking with rage. How dare you? How dare you come into our home and speak about our daughter like that? Your daughter is a grown woman who chose to be a sugar mama, Marcus shot back. That's not my problem. I stood in that kitchen, my whole world crumbling around me, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not rage, not the screaming hurt I expected, just a crystalline clarity that cut through everything else. I understood, in that moment, exactly who Marcus was and exactly what I needed to do. I walked back into the dining room, my steps steady and sure. Every eye turned to me, and I could see the mix of anger, pity, and concern on my family's faces. Marcus had the decency to look ashamed, at least for a moment. Sarah, he started. I can explain, no need, I said, my voice calm and level. I heard everything. He opened his mouth to speak again, but I held up a hand. I want you to leave, I said simply. Now, Sarah, please, let me now, Marcus. He looked around the table, perhaps hoping for an ally, but found only cold stares. With a muttered curse, he grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. I followed him, my family trailing behind. At the front door, he turned back to me, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been regret in his eyes. Sarah, did you love me at all? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He was quiet for a long moment, and then he shook his head. I thought you knew what this was. I see, I said, and I did. I saw everything clearly now. He left, and I stood in the doorway watching his friend's car disappear down the long driveway. My family gathered around me, offering comfort and support, but I barely heard them. My mind was already working, already planning. I'm going to go lie down for a while, I told them, and they nodded, understanding. But I didn't go to my room to cry or rage or fall apart. I went to my laptop. You see, Marcus had been right about one thing. I was loaded. But what he hadn't understood was the scope of what that meant. I didn't just have money sitting in accounts. I controlled businesses, investments, properties. I had power, real power, and I'd never fully understood how to use it until that moment. The first thing I did was change all my passwords. Bank accounts, investment portfolios, credit cards, everything. Then I started making calls to my lawyer, my accountant, my business manager. I had work to do. Over the next few days, I systematically removed Marcus from every aspect of my financial life. The credit card I'd given him for emergencies? Cancelled. The rent I'd been paying for his apartment stopped. The business loan I'd consigned for his marketing courses called in. The car lease I'd been covering because his credit wasn't good enough terminated, but that was just the beginning. I hired a private investigator to find out more about Jessica Morrison and discovered that Marcus had been living a double life more elaborate than I'd imagined. He'd been telling her he was a successful entrepreneur, funding their relationship with my money while promising her a future I thought he was building with me. She had no idea I existed, just like I'd had no idea about her. The investigator also uncovered something else interesting. Marcus had been planning to propose to Jessica over Christmas, using a ring he'd bought with the credit card I'd been paying for. My money was going to fund his proposal to another woman. The irony was almost laughable, but I wasn't laughing. I was planning. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Marcus started calling. At first, it was angry voicemails about the credit card being declined and his rent check bouncing. Then confused messages asking what was going on. Finally, desperate pleas for me to call him back, to give him a chance to explain. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on something else the investigator had found. Marcus's friend Jake, the one who'd driven him to Thanksgiving dinner, worked at a high-end restaurant downtown, a restaurant I'd been considering investing in. The owner had been courting me for months, trying to get me to back his expansion plans. I scheduled a meeting. Miss Coleman, the owner, David Park, greeted me warmly. "I'm so glad you reconsidered my proposal. I have some specific terms," I told him, sliding a contract across the table. "I want to be a silent partner, but I want complete control over hiring decisions for management positions." He looked confused but nodded. "Of course, whatever you need." I invested $2 million in his restaurant. In return, I got a 40% stake and the right to approve all senior staff. It was a good investment, one that would pay dividends for years to come. But the real return was what happened next. A week later, Jake lost his job. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd had my people look into his background and discovered he'd been skimming from the till. The restaurant had been losing money for months because of his theft, but no one had caught it. I simply brought it to David Park's attention. Marcus's support system was shrinking, but the real masterstroke came when I found out where Jessica Morrison worked. She was a graphic designer at a small marketing firm that had been struggling to find clients. A firm that had sent me several proposals over the past year, hoping to land the contract for my company's rebranding. I scheduled a meeting with the firm's owner, a eager young man named Thomas Chen, who nearly fell over himself trying to impress me. The contract I offered was generous, more than generous. It would transform his small firm into a major player in the city's marketing scene. There was just one small condition: I need complete creative control over the Morrison account. I told him during our final negotiation. "The Morrison account?" He looked confused. "Jessica Morrison. She's one of your designers, correct? I want her assigned exclusively to my company's projects. Full-time, no other clients." Yes, of course. But may I ask why specifically her? "I've seen her work." I lied smoothly. "Very impressive. I think she has the vision I'm looking for." Thomas Chen would have agreed to almost anything to land a client like me. The contract was signed within the week. Now Jessica Morrison was working for me, though she didn't know it. Every project she touched came through my company. Every paycheck she received was funded by my money. I was supporting the woman my ex-boyfriend had cheated on me with, and she had no idea. The irony was delicious, but I still wasn't done. A month after Thanksgiving, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Marcus had finally swallowed his pride enough to reach out through my cousin David, asking for a meeting. He was desperate, David told me. His whole life was falling apart, and he couldn't understand why. I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. When I arrived, I almost didn't recognize him. The confident, charming man I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by someone who looked haggard and desperate. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Sarah," he said, standing up as I approached. Thank you for coming. I sit down, Marcus, I said, taking the chair across from him. You have 10 minutes, he sat, his hands shaking slightly as he reached for his coffee cup. I don't understand what's happening, he began. Everything's falling apart. My credit cards are maxed out. I can't make rent. Jake lost his job and can't help me anymore. Even Jessica, he stopped, realizing what he'd said. Even Jessica what? I asked, my voice perfectly level. She's been working crazy hours lately, barely has time to see me. Some big client has her pulling all-nighters every week. And I lost the lease on the office space I was going to rent for my agency. The financing fell through. I said nothing. Just watched him squirm. I know I hurt you, he continued, desperation creeping into his voice. I know I made a mistake, but I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm truly sorry. I was confused, scared of commitment, and I made the worst possible choices. But I love you. I know I do now. I was just too stupid to see it before. You love me, I repeated, my tone neutral. Yes, he said, reaching across the table to touch my hand. I pulled it away. I love you, and I know you love me too. What we had was real, Sarah. It was the most real thing in my life, what we had. I said slowly, was you using me for money while you built a relationship with someone else? No. That's not. You called me a sugar mama, Marcus. You said I was someone you were seeing on the side. You bragged about playing me for money. He had the grace to look ashamed. I was angry, defensive. I said things I didn't mean because I was embarrassed. But that's not how I really feel. How do you really feel? I feel like I made the biggest mistake of my life, he said, and for a moment, I almost believed him. I feel like I lost the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too proud and too scared to admit how much I needed you. Needed me, I said. Not loved me. Needed me, both, he said quickly. I needed you and I loved you. I still do. I leaned back in my chair, studying his face. Tell me about Jessica, he flinched. That's over. I broke up with her, when, last week. I realized I was just running from what I really wanted, which was you. You broke up with her because your life fell apart and you need someone to pay your bills. No, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I broke up with her because I love you. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small digital recorder, setting it on the table between us. Marcus stared at it like it was a snake. What is that? Insurance, I said. I want you to tell me the truth, Marcus. The real truth about why. You're here. I already told you you're here because you're broke, I interrupted. You're here because Jessica Morrison is working 80-hour weeks for a client who's keeping her too busy to subsidize your lifestyle. You're here because Jake can't lend you money anymore since he lost his job for stealing. You're here because every financial lifeline you had has been cut, and you're desperate. His face went pale. How do you? I know everything, Marcus. I know about the ring you bought Jessica with my credit card. I know about the apartment you were going to rent for your agency with money from a loan I consigned. I know about every lie you told, every dollar you stole, every moment you were with her while pretending to love me. Sarah, please, I also know that you don't love me. You never did. You loved my money, my generosity, my willingness to fund your dreams while you gave your heart to someone else. And now that the money's gone, you think you can manipulate me into giving it back by claiming you've realized you love me. He was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew and how much he could get away with. Fine, he said finally, his voice harder now. You want the truth? Here's the truth. I needed your money, yes, but I also cared about you. Maybe not in the way you wanted, but I cared. And yeah, I'm here because I'm desperate. But that doesn't mean everything I'm saying is a lie. It doesn't mean any of it is true either. So what do you want from me? He asked, frustration bleeding through. You want me to grovel? You want me to beg? Fine. I'm begging. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I was with Jessica. I'm sorry for all of it. Now please, help me. I'm drowning here. I turned off the recorder and put it back in my purse. There's the honesty I was looking for. So you'll help me? No, I said, standing up. I won't, Sarah. Wait, goodbye, Marcus. I left him sitting there, staring after me in shock. But I wasn't done. The recording I just made would come in handy for what I had planned next. You see, Jessica Morrison deserved to know the truth about the man she'd been dating for 3 years. She deserved to know that he'd been cheating on her, using another woman's money to fund their relationship, and was now trying to manipulate his way back into that woman's life. I sent her the recording along with a carefully crafted letter explaining who I was and what Marcus had been doing. I included copies of credit card statements showing the charges he'd made while claiming to be a successful entrepreneur, photos of the ring he'd bought her with my money, and evidence of every lie he'd told. I never heard back from her directly, but I didn't need to. The investigator I'd kept on retainer confirmed that Jessica Morrison had ended her relationship with Marcus the day after receiving my package. She'd also apparently thrown the engagement ring at his head before telling him never to contact her again, but the final act of my revenge was still to come. 3 months after that coffee shop meeting, I was at a charity gala downtown when I saw him. Marcus was there with an older woman, someone I didn't recognize, and he was turning on the charm full blast. He'd clearly found a new target, someone else to use and manipulate. I watched them for a while, noting how he hung on her every word, how he complimented her dress, how he played the role of the devoted younger man. It was nauseating, but also illuminating. This was who he really was, who he'd always been. A predator looking for his next victim. The woman he was with was Patricia Kellerman, a widow who'd made her fortune in real estate. I knew her by reputation, a smart, successful woman who'd built an empire from nothing. She was also known for her generosity, her willingness to help young entrepreneurs get started. I couldn't let him do to her what he'd done to me. I approached them during the cocktail hour, timing it perfectly. Marcus saw me coming and his face went white, but he couldn't escape without causing a scene. Marcus, I said warmly, as if we were old friends. What a surprise to see you here, Sarah, he managed, his voice strained. This is Patricia Kellerman. Patricia, this is Sarah Coleman. Patricia's face lit up with recognition. Sarah Coleman, of Coleman Manufacturing? I'm such an admirer of your work in sustainable textiles, and your philanthropy is legendary. Thank you, I said, smiling. That's very kind. I was just telling someone earlier about Marcus here. We have such a history together. Marcus's face was getting paler by the second, but he couldn't do anything but stand there and smile. Oh, how wonderful, Patricia said. Marcus was just telling me about his marketing background. He's looking to start his own agency, is he? I said, turning to Marcus with a bright smile. How exciting. You know, Marcus, I was just thinking about our conversation at Thanksgiving. You remember when you told my family about your business? Philosophy? I'm not sure I remember exactly what. Oh, you were so eloquent, I continued, my voice warm and friendly. Something about playing the game, finding rich women who want to feel loved, and how everyone wins when you give them what they want. It was quite the speech. Patricia's smile faltered slightly, and she looked between Marcus and me with growing confusion. I think there might be some misunderstanding, Marcus started, but I cut him off. No misunderstanding at all, I said, cheerfully. You were very clear about your approach to relationships, very honest about your methods. Patricia, you seem like such a lovely woman. I'm sure Marcus has told you all about his current situation, his financial struggles, his recent breakup with his girlfriend of 3 years. No, he said he was single, Patricia said slowly, her sharp eyes beginning to narrow. Oh, well, technically he is now, I said, after Jessica found out about the other women he was seeing while they were together. But don't worry, I'm sure he's learned from his mistakes. Marcus looked like he was about to be sick. Sarah, could I speak with you privately? Of course, I said. Patricia, it was lovely meeting you. I hope you have a wonderful evening. I walked away, leaving Marcus to deal with the wreckage of his latest scheme. I didn't need to watch to know how that conversation would end. Patricia Kellerman hadn't built a real estate empire by being naive or gullible. An hour later, I saw Marcus leaving the gala alone, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He never saw me watching from across the room, never saw the satisfied smile on my face. That was 6 months ago. I haven't seen or heard from Marcus since, though the investigator I kept on retainer for a while reported that he left the city entirely, presumably to start fresh somewhere else with a new identity and new victims. Jessica Morrison, meanwhile, has thrived. The work she's been doing for my company has been exceptional, and I've made sure she's been well compensated for it. She's also been promoted to creative director at her firm, a position that comes with a significant raise and equity stake. She deserves success, and I'm happy to have played a role in giving it to her. As for me, I've learned something valuable about power and how to use it. Real power isn't about making grand gestures or dramatic speeches. It's about understanding the systems that control people's lives and knowing how to manipulate those systems to achieve your goals. Marcus thought he was playing me, but he never understood that I was playing a much larger game. He saw a generous woman who was easy to manipulate. I saw a man who was entirely dependent on things I controlled, and I systematically removed those dependencies until he had nothing left. He hurt me, yes. He broke my heart and shattered my trust and made me question everything I thought I knew about love. But in the end, he also taught me something invaluable about my own strength. He showed me that I didn't need to scream or cry or beg for justice. I could simply take it. The best revenge, it turns out, isn't a dish served cold. It's a lesson taught slowly, methodically, and with such precision that the target never even realizes they're being taught until it's far too late to do anything about it. Marcus thought I would beg him to come back, that I would be so broken by his betrayal that I'd take him back on any terms. Instead, he discovered that the quiet, generous woman he'd underestimated was actually someone far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. Someone who could take everything away from him without raising her voice or shedding a single tear. Someone who understood that the most devastating victories are won in silence, with patience, and with the kind of cold, calculated precision that leaves no room for doubt about who really holds the power. I never did find out if Marcus learned his lesson, but I learned mine, and that, in the end, was worth far more than anything he could have given me. The ring I'd planned to give him is still in my jewelry box, a reminder of how close I came to making the biggest mistake of my life. Sometimes I take it out and look at it, not with sadness, but with gratitude. Gratitude that I discovered who he really was before I made that mistake permanent. And sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in my apartment, I think about what would have happened if my family hadn't exposed him that night. If I'd gone through with the proposal, if I'd married him, if I'd spent years funding his lies while he gave his love to someone else, the thought makes me shudder. But it also makes me smile, because I didn't make that mistake. I learned who he was, and I acted accordingly. And in doing so, I discovered who I was too. I'm not just a generous woman with a good heart. I'm someone who understands power and how to use it. I'm someone who can plan and execute and achieve my goals without anyone ever seeing me coming. I'm someone who learned that the best revenge isn't about making your enemy suffer. It's about making them understand, with perfect clarity, exactly what they lost when they chose to betray you. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very smart, you can make them understand that lesson without ever having to lower yourself to their level. Marcus thought he was playing a game he could win, but he never realized that I was playing a different game entirely, one with rules he never understood and stakes he never imagined. In the end, he lost everything: his girlfriend, his financial support, his future prospects, even his sense of self-worth. And I gained something far more valuable than anything he could have given me. I gained the knowledge that I never need to beg anyone to love me, because I'm strong enough to build a life worth living all on my own, and that, more than any revenge, is the real victory.